The sun dipped low behind the cracked, red cliffs when Jacob finally accepted that he was lost. The narrow trail he had been following for hours had faded into a maze of dry grass, stones and twisting branches. His horse shifted uneasily beneath him, sensing the coming night, and a chill swept over the desert as the last of the daylight drained away. Jacob slid down from his saddle and led the animal forward, hoping to recognize some landmark before darkness fully closed in. That was when he saw the figure near a withered, lifeless tree. At first he thought it was a boulder or some strange shadow, but then it moved. The man, if he even was a man, was massive. Broad as a door, hunched forward with shoulders that looked carved out of stone, his long hair hanging in dirty tangles around his face. His clothes were torn and barely clung to his frame. When he slowly lifted his head, Jacob caught a glimpse of eyes that seemed far too old, weighted with exhaustion and something like grief. Instinct told Jacob to reach for his gun, to turn and ride away while he still could. He had heard enough desert stories about bandits, madmen, and worse, but something in the stranger's gaze stopped him. There was no threat in it, only hunger. "You lost, little man?" The stranger rumbled, his voice deep and rough like distant thunder. "Seems I am," Jacob replied, surprised at how steady his voice sounded. He hesitated only a moment before untying the small pack from his saddle. Inside was a tin bowl filled with the last of his stew, still warm from the fire he had put out earlier. It was all he had until he reached civilization again. Yet without fully understanding why, he knelt down and held it out to the giant. "Here," he said simply. "You look like you need it more than I do." The stranger stared at the bowl as though it were a sacred offering. Carefully, as if afraid to break it, he took it in his massive hands and ate slowly, each bite measured, respectful. When he finished, he exhaled and closed his eyes for a moment. "My name is Koru," he said at last. "Few would share food with what they do not understand. You have a brave heart, Jacob." A strange shiver ran through Jacob at the sound of his name, though he had never given it. Before he could ask how the giant knew, Koru stood towering against the fading sky. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the rocky hills, his heavy steps silent despite his size, until he disappeared among the shadows. Jacob remained there, holding the empty bowl, listening to the whisper of the wind. He had no idea that the simple kindness he had shown would echo through the desert by the next sunrise. Jacob woke to a sound he had never heard before, a low rumble that seemed to roll through the ground like distant thunder. At first he thought a storm was moving in, but when he stepped out onto his porch, the sky was clear and painted with the soft gold of early morning. The rumble grew louder, heavier, more deliberate. The earth beneath his boots vibrated. His horse neighed in panic, pulling at its post, and the chickens burst into frantic motion. Then he saw them. Shapes began to form along the ridgeline, dark silhouettes rising against the brightening horizon. One turned into 10, 10 into 100. Soon the hills were lined with towering figures mounted on powerful horses, their outlines sharp and unreal against the morning light. They were all enormous, larger than any man Jacob had ever seen, wearing coarse leather, feathers, bones, and carved stones that clinked softly as they moved. Weapons rested across their backs and in their hands, long spears, heavy axes, bows taller than most men. They looked like something pulled from legend, not flesh and blood. At their center rode a familiar figure, Koru, but he was no longer the ragged wanderer Jacob had fed. His tangled hair was now braided and bound, his skin washed clean, and his massive frame was draped in armor carved from dark stone etched with strange, glowing symbols. He guided his horse forward, and when he reached the edge of the ranch fence, he dismounted in one smooth motion. The entire line of warriors behind him stopped at once, perfect and silent. Jacob's hand hovered near his revolver, though he had not drawn it. His heart hammered in his chest, unsure if he was about to be honored or destroyed. Koru stepped toward him and then, to Jacob's shock, lowered himself to one knee. The sound of it striking the earth was like a drum beat. Immediately, every warrior behind him followed, kneeling in a wide arc that spread across the land. "Why are you doing this?" Jacob asked, his voice strained with disbelief. "Get up, all of you. You fed a starving man without asking who he was," Koru replied, lifting his head. "You saw weakness and showed kindness instead of fear. That man was the chief of the Stone River clan, cast out by his own people until he proved his strength and humility. Jacob stared at him, stunned. "I just gave you dinner. You saved more than my hunger," Koru said softly. "You restored my honor. Today they see that my spirit is strong again. And because of you, they bow." Behind Koru, one of the warriors stepped forward and placed a heavy chest at Jacob's feet. It burst open with the glint of gold, gemstones, and finely worked tools. Others brought stacks of hides, bundles of herbs, and weapons polished to a gleam. "We offer protection to your land," Koru continued. "No raider, no outlaw, no army will step here without our consent." Jacob looked over the kneeling giants, still unsure this was real. He felt no triumph, only a strange, quiet responsibility settling. Weeks flowed by after the morning the Stone River clan filled Jacob's horizon. Life at the ranch changed in ways he had never imagined, and yet, in other ways, remained exactly the same. The sun still rose over the distant cliffs. The wind still whispered through the tall, dry grass. The pot of stew still hung over the fire each evening, filling the air with the same familiar scent. But now, far beyond the fences, silent figures watched from the ridges. Sometimes he caught the glint of a spearhead in the sun or saw a massive, shaped step between the rocks, and vanish again. He never felt afraid. Their presence felt more like a shield than a threat. Word spread quickly through the surrounding towns. Cowboys riding past slowed their horses and stared. Traders brought extra supplies, offering them at fair prices instead of trying to cheat him. Even the most hardened drifters tipped their hats from a distance. They all asked the same question in hushed voices. "Is it true?" Jacob only nodded. He did not boast. The less he said, the more the legend grew. One late afternoon, as the sky burned orange and purple, a rider collapsed at his gate. The man was thin, bleeding, and barely conscious, his jacket marked with the symbol of the Silver Crest Gang, a group known for robbery and murder. Everything in Jacob's mind told him to leave the man where he lay. That was the smart choice, the safe choice, but it was not the choice his heart knew. With effort, he dragged the wounded stranger inside, cleaned the dirt from his cuts, and poured water between his cracked lips. When the man finally opened his eyes, fear flickered in them. "Why, help me," he rasped. "Because you needed it," Jacob answered. "That's enough reason?" When Koru learned of this, concern shadowed his calm expression. "This man belongs to those who would harm you." "Then let him belong to something better for a while," Jacob replied. 3 nights later, the distant sound of hooves pounded the earth again, sharper this time, angry. The Silver Crest Gang rode under the moonlight, guns drawn, faces hard with rage. They never reached the gate. From the hills, the Stone River warriors emerged like living mountains, surrounding the land in a wide, unbroken circle. They did not charge. They did not shout. They simply stood, an unmovable wall of strength. The gang leader swallowed, his bravado dissolving as he took in the sight. "You bow to a rancher?" he scoffed weakly. Koru stepped forward, towering over him. "We do not bow to his land." "Or his weapons." "We bow to his heart." Silence hung in the air, heavy and trembling. One by one, the gang backed away, turning their horses and vanishing into the darkness, humbled by a power that had never fired a single shot. Jacob watched from his porch, the warm light from his window stretching out into the night. He had not planned to become a legend. He had only shared a simple meal. Yet now, in the quiet that followed, he understood something deeper than fear or Po.